Hey guys, today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Fred. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, MP3 player. That's audibletrial.com/Fred. But for now, enjoy the show. Hey guys, welcome to the 2016 Podcats Blast, day 5. That's right, 7 days, 7 episodes, and 7 amazing authors. Thank you so much for pushing the download button. I am Frederic Baye, and you are listening to the Book Geek Unchained, which is home to literary marvels, those you know and those you don't know. I am a guy, I am a dude, I am a geek, I'm a writer, I'm a host, I'm a podcaster, I'm a friend, I'm a partner. I am everything under the sun, okay? This podcast is about fiction and non-fiction books that we love. Books change our lives. Books entertain us. Books make us grow. Basically, it is a live podcast. It is free. Every time you download it on iTunes or Stitcher, please go over there and subscribe. It is listener-supported. Help a brother out. It really does help when you put in a positive review. You know, or you tell a friend, or from podcasts, free gifts, goodies, all sorts of goodies, Q&A articles. Subscribe at frederickbaye.com, on Twitter at BayeFred, on Facebook. Simply type in my name, Frederic Baye, and check out my YouTube channel, The Book Geek. That's right. Or just type in my name, Frederic Baye, and you will find me. Guys, I always like to start off with something funny, so listen to this. A wife was making a breakfast of fried eggs for her husband. Suddenly, her husband burst into the kitchen. "Careful," he said. "Careful. Put in some more butter." "Oh my gosh, you're cooking too many at once." "Too many. Turn them now." "We need more butter." "Oh my gosh, where are we going to get more butter?" "They're going to stick." Careful. I said careful. You never listen to me when you're cooking. Never. Turn them. Hurry up. Are you crazy? Have you lost your mind? Don't forget to salt them. You know you always forget to salt them. Use the salt. The salt. The wife stared at him. "What in the world is wrong with you? You think I don't know how to fry a couple of eggs?" The husband calmly replied, "I just wanted to show you what it feels like when I'm driving." All right, guys. All right, I love that one. That was really, really good. Anyway, today, hey, we kick it off. You know, it's going to be a very, it's going to be a very refreshing episode. I mean, we're going to talk. All right, and it's going to be a 2-part conversation. In this first part, we talk with Maura Sweeney. She is an author, a podcaster, an international speaker, a HuffPost blogger, also known as the ambassador of happiness. That's right. She is the ambassador of happiness, as you will see. Maura guides people on the path of living happy inside out. Her series, The Art of Happiness, people, it's a must read. Get ready for a fresh dose of joy for the next 45 minutes. I guarantee you this. Today we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. Okay, we're going to talk about what drives us, what makes us happy. We're going to talk about why we do what we do and why we end up where we end up. Why don't we follow our life's purpose? Why don't we follow our intuition? Why don't we ask ourselves the right questions? We're going to go all over this today. It's a fascinating interview. She has an amazing story to tell. So without further ado, we're going to get to the conversation right after this. Hey guys, quick thanks to radioguestlist.com, where you can find people to interview for free. For free. Or if you want to be interviewed, you can go there too. radioguestlist.com. Thank you guys for your support. And speaking of you listeners, I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. If you would like to be on this show to discuss a book you have written or that you loved, if you have a book recommendation or you just want to chat, email me. I want to hear from you at info@fredericbai.com. That's info@fredericbai.com. And for advertisement offers, use the same address with subject advertising.
Very good. So nice to meet you. I really appreciate you having me on your podcast. When I sent to you the email, I thought, I don't know, he's probably looking for people that have written grand novels. Mine are several small ebooks, but I am thrilled that you included me on among your roster of authors, and I really enjoyed learning a little bit about you, because I could see in a way why you even decided you wanted me on, because when you say you love getting up knowing other people matter, and your purpose, passion, and love, and that is very much like me. We just find different ways of doing it.
Awesome. I'm honored to have you. You're doing a lot of things, and I can't wait to get into those. Really, it's really cool. Cool.
It's funny too, I'll tell you. Where exactly are you in Canada?
Montreal.
Which is so beautiful. Is it very cold today?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're where are you?
I'm in Florida.
Oh my gosh. I was in the Caribbean actually 2 weeks ago, a week ago. So it's like, it's like a contrast. Like, it's crazy. You know, it was like sunny there, and I come here, it's like a snowstorm. Anyway.
You know, and I grew up right outside of New York City, went to school up in Boston, but always wanted to live in a warm climate. And so my husband and I have been down here for years, but it's funny. He was just watching the football game coming from Minneapolis, where they're playing in 3 Below. And all I can think of is, I'm so glad we moved to Florida. But Montreal, though, I was there years ago. I travel a lot, but only once to Montreal. We were there in June. It was so gorgeous. What a beautiful city.
Thank you. Florida is pretty nice also.
It is,
Florida is great.
It is. We're on the West Coast, what I would call the quiet coast. This is not like Miami, but it works so well for us because we're close to the airport. We're right on the Gulf of Mexico and the Tampa Bay. And there's a lot that goes on down here, and then we travel a lot. So it's, what I always think, wherever is good for you is good for you. You make it your own paradise.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that came that I felt from your work is your pictures. You exude happiness. You exude you know what I mean? Like you I don't know how to say that. Anyway, you exude happiness.
Do you want to know? Cool. I'm glad you say that. It's funny. I interview several times a week, and people will tell me that even before we get on the official interview, like you, and they'll say, Maura, it comes right through the phone or whatever. But you want to know something crazy, Frederick? Is that when I was a little girl, my grandmother used to call me Waterworks because I cried at the drop of a hat. So what you get out of me today is a lifelong vocation. And it was a decision I made as a child. And I'm so glad today that I can take everything I've learned and turn it into something public so other people could get happier too, faster than I did.
All right. So we're going to dive into it. So welcome, everybody. We are here with Maura Sweeney. Is that the right way to say it?
That's correct. However you say Laura, I'm Laura with an M instead. Maura.
Maura, right?
Yep.
Sweeney. She's an author, international speaker, a HuffPost blogger, podcaster, world traveler, and connector. She is on a mission to spread happiness around the world, waiting a half a century to debut in a profession that can't be acquired through university degrees, corporate promotions, or public accolades. Author Maura Sweeney introduces the art of happiness. We're so glad to have you here. I already like you. That's awesome. That's going to be fun. Anyway. All right. So let's dive into a little bit your background. What's up with your background?
It's funny. Who would ever have thought that I would wait until I was over 50 years old to decide to write specifically about how we can find happiness from the inside of our lives instead of always seeking it on the outside and trying to become a cookie cutter after the world's ways. And it's funny, as I'm hearing you read my bio, I guess you got that off of Amazon. It sounded familiar. Mm-hmm. It's very true. Do you know, I actually left law school midstream because I was so unhappy and because I could no longer live after a pattern that was chosen for me rather than finding out where my own passions and joys were and living out of that space. So everything I do today, Frederick, is really an extension of who I am. I was one of those people brought up, as I'm sure many are, in various ways, but in my case, I was brought up to be a New Jersey lawyer. And back when I studied law, if you went to law school, that's what you were going to practice for the next 40 years until you retired, and you were going to practice likely in the same state in which you studied. Well, I didn't want to continue the rest of my life in a cold climate like New Jersey. I really wanted to live where it was warm. I am such an advocate for everyone, and I couldn't conceive of being in an industry that was always so adversarial. And I needed to step off that track, which was the Maura track that I was groomed for since I was a very little girl, and find my way to happiness. And that's what I've done, and now I write about it all the time, everywhere I go. And I fortunately get a chance to meet people like you that will allow me to share some of my thoughts and my ideas with their own tribe of people. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, that's awesome. See, this is what's fascinating to me is that story. You went into law school. Talk to us a little bit. What brought you to law school in the first place?
How about this? My family brought me to law school. When I was little, I guess I have to tell you, and this is probably one of the secrets to happiness, is that I always see myself as a beneficiary in life. And I think every one of us can do the same, meaning that no matter what experience we come out of, even when it seems like it's a tough one or a negative one, there's always a lesson or something we could benefit by. But in my case, when I was about 5 years old, my family made this decision that I was going to be a lawyer when I grew up. And what I was, Frederick, was I'm a left-handed person. I'm free-spirited. I can never remember people's names or faces, but I could tell you everything about their heart, their soul, their life stories, their interests. I could draw out of them gems, diamonds, and everything else. But what I ended up was I was probably a pretty compliant child. And I was a pleaser. And I was, one of those kids that I was always doing the next thing. So rather than growing up wearing cute little dresses, learning how to dance, being creative, playing outside, I was indoors, learning piano. I was groomed to be very academic. At one point, I was even sent to a private prep school for girls, which was another place I didn't belong. I need to be with the world. And so I went away to college. I graduated from Boston College way, way back in 1980, political science, Spanish literature. I even was working for Senator Ted Kennedy at the time, and I was offered a full-time job. Now, here's the crazy thing. This is something so worth hearing for anyone who's listening in today. Do you realize how many things there are in life that sound good? Years ago, for someone of my era, it would sound good that parents would want a young daughter to grow up in a profession and become a lawyer. It sounds good. It sounds very empowering. The fact that I was chosen out of everybody in my class to get an internship with Ted Kennedy and then to be offered a summer job and then a full-time job, it sounds good. Later on, after leaving law school, I was had several positions within the telecommunications company, or I say corporations or industry, and I was offered several promotions. I only took a few of them, all for the same reason. I was following happiness. I was following things that made my insides feel at ease, authentic, and energized. And that's where I go back. There are certain things that sound really good to the outside world, but if they don't feel good to you, and if you feel like you're working against gravity or laboring in those arenas, then find something better. And really, that was my whole story. In fact, I would say, unlike many others of my era or even my background, coming from like that New York area where I grew up 10 minutes outside of Manhattan. It was very much like be competitive, work, walk over people. I was never that type. I was always a hard worker. I was very earnest. I always looked to be passionate, but I've actually spent decades moving away, let's say, moving out of the form in which I was placed growing up, and stepping out piece by piece, little by little, and becoming the individual that, let's say, I was born in this world to become. And I can't even tell you how the process is not always easy, because there's a lot of mental baggage that goes along with it. But the outcomes are so invigorating, inspiring, life-affirming. They help us have more freedom. And my experience has been this. The more free I get, the more I bring others into that same freedom. It's almost like an unspoken thing. When people see free people who have grown out of their own boxes, those individuals who have already grown out of their own comfort zones and boxes, silently and otherwise, give that same spirit of freedom to others, as if to say, come on, you could do it too. I want to see the gem you are. I want to see the gift that you are to the world. I want to see everything within you that is just waiting to find a place of purpose and life, because the world is waiting for you and your gifts and your light. That's me. It's my message. It goes around, friend. And I speak on several levels. I'll speak on things like leadership, especially sustainable leadership. What is it that makes a leader last a lifetime? Things like influence. A lot of people feel powerless. And I write from the perspective of letting people know we are all people of influence, and all of us can be a leader in our own right. And so that's it. What's your next question?
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. We are here with Maura Sweeney. She's an author and an international speaker, a HuffPost blogger, a podcaster, a world traveler, and connector. She's on a mission to spread happiness around the world. Hey, that's interesting. You say that really, things sound good. I think that's a huge thing today, because look, I was in the Caribbean, like I said, like a week ago, and I was speaking with my stepbrother, and he really followed the protocol. He became a teacher, and I asked him, because I always ask, I always like to ask these, people these questions. Why did you start doing this? And he just said, and it seems that you entered law school. I became a financial advisor. Oh, I mean,
so you have the same reaction about that as I did about law.
But I learned a lot. I don't regret the experience. I learned a lot. But my point is, I always like to find out why they got into it. And he tells me now, he talked to me about that frustration he has, and he begins to ask himself the meaning of it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what advice would you give to anybody right now who is in that situation? You have this person in front of you, 40 years. Let's say the person's 40 years old. They have a nice house, nice wife, well-educated children. Things are rolling, but there's that little frustration, that little thing inside them that says, is that all there is? What would you tell them?
What a great question, because I address this question, I think, whether directly or indirectly, all the time. Here's the advice I always give to people, and I know exactly what kind of a personality you're speaking of. What I didn't even share with you is that my husband and I, we met at college. We've been married since 1981, which is like, whoa, that was a millennium ago. Mm-hmm. And both of us really traveled, consistent careers. I had a corporate career. My husband worked at a huge corporation, went out in sales. We eventually started our own business. Part of the time I was home as a homeschooling mother, but here's what happened. And I'm going to take this all around again for you, if you don't mind, Frederick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a good storyteller. I don't always get directly to the point.
That's why you're a podcaster, I guess. But.
I guess so. But here's what happened with us. I had a very, very good career, good income, but I got burnt out. And that was when I finally had our daughter. I was staying home with her. And I actually used that time when I was at home to learn what it was like to have a sense of self-worth apart from a corporate paycheck, which I could have, taken care of a family of 4 comfortably, and a title. I became, in a sense, comfortable with being just me. And it's amazing how much I grew during that process. But the other thing was, while I was home and serving as a homeschooling mom to our daughter, I helped my husband build our business. It was a computer rep firm. The firm did exceptionally well, very quietly, but we sold some major lines into 2 of the largest computer distributor companies in the world. And so what we were in our 40s, we were this suburban couple. We lived in a very nice home. We were never flashy people, but we lived very, very, very comfortably, always underneath our income level. But here we were, and everybody probably looked at us as like the nice suburban couple. We had a daughter. We had 2 big dogs. We had our own business. And here's what happened. Our daughter, who was very precocious, enrolled in college by the time she was 13. So I knew my days were numbered. I couldn't wait to get back to corporate work or do something, but I didn't want to go back to corporate. My husband, meanwhile, was getting frustrated in the computer industry. And I thought, well, I work with him. Am I going to do this full time? I'm not even interested in computers. To me, I like people. I like ideas. I like that kind of a thing. That's where I get my energy. So you know what we were? We were those people in our 40s doing very nicely. We had what looked like all the accoutrements of so-called baby success, right? And guess what? Neither of us, my husband or I, felt like we were doing anything of purpose. So what we chose to do was we sold our home, which we sold at the top of the market, and moved to something smaller. We worked an exit strategy out for our business. We got rid of so much excess stuff, and we set ourselves up to prepare for our next careers, which we wanted to be impactful careers in society. In other words, how could we socially and positively impact culture and have lifestyle careers that would allow us to use everything we had in our background, travel, meet people, grow, etc. Okay, so let's go back to your brother or to anyone else in that demo. Here's what I do. I always ask people this: if they're 1880, put their hand on their heart, let's say right below the collarbone and above their heart. Close their eyes and just get quiet for a minute and survey their past, especially when they were younger. Those times before their parents, their teachers, or the world told them what they could or could not do, what they could or could not be. And here's what inevitably happens. As people do that and they just sit quietly, putting your hand on your heart does something. It takes the attention and the focus away from the intellect and the brain that has been so overly stimulated by societal and cultural messages and media messages. And all of a sudden now you're tuning in to your own GPS system of happiness and your own soul. That's what I would say. And you know what happens when people do that? All of a sudden they get pictures of fun things they used to do. And it could be something so totally random, Frederick, totally random. And yet the moment a smile comes on their face, they have just tapped in to their personal GPS for happiness, or their soul that all this time knows what they like, knows what they're about, and knows who they are. And once they see those little strings, I would call them maybe threads of their past, threads of their reason for being here, that they usually pick up on things like their curiosities, their interests, their passions, their fascinations, their creativity, their imaginations. There may be people out there that grew up totally derailed from, or let's say detoured from areas that they could be interested in. So here's what I say to people. My husband and I literally took a major leap off a cliff to say, you know, we're going to do something different. We don't have a backup plan, but hopefully what we're doing is going to work. And it has. But other people cannot necessarily be in the same situation we were, right? Because of finances, because of additional growing children. So here's what I would suggest. You do that exercise, find out what you're interested in, find that smile, and start finding ways to connect with whatever was in your little imagination. That means, was it a movie you saw? Was it a song you loved? Was it a game you were playing? What is it about that got your attention? Go explore it further. Maybe you want to look it up on the internet. Maybe you want to go to a meetup that has people in a line of business or a line of hobbies that you think you're interested in. Go out, find these people, look for ways to interact and to engage. And do you know, little by little, what we're doing is cultivating the real us within us. And the more we do it, the more we have to work with. It's like starting with a little tiny piece of thread that the more you play with it gets thicker and turns into twine. And then later you start, taking these pieces of twine and working them together. And before you know it, you end up having something of a tapestry. I want to tell you how it happened with me, and I think this will make sense. I'll even tell you my husband's story. In my case, when I was a little girl, let me just tell you, this would be early 1960s, right outside of New York City, living up in New Jersey. I had a mother who was really agoraphobic. I didn't realize it. She was afraid to go outdoors. Put me outside, let me stay with all my friends. So I loved people, and I was fascinated by airplanes and by different cultures. So every time an airplane would fly up in the sky on its way to Newark Airport, back or forth, I would go down on my grass in the front of my house, and I'd stare up at the clouds and stare up at the airplane, and I'd say, where are they going? Who are they visiting? What do the people look like? I wonder if I could ever meet them. This was so truly in my heart and in my mind. All right, that's one little piece. That would be one of my, if you ever asked me to do that exercise, what did you think about when you were little? I wanted to meet the world, okay? Number 2, I told you that I was supposed to grow up and be an attorney. That was because I was supposed to be modeled after my grandfather. He graduated from Georgetown University. He was a very powerful lawyer in New York, New Jersey. Well, good for him. That's what he wanted, but it wasn't really for me. So when I was very little, I'd go to his office, and rather than watching him and paying attention to what he was doing, I was absolutely fascinated by his legal secretary, and not so much the legal secretary as I was with her typewriter and the ability to put words on paper in a professionally organized, official way that when they came out off these longer sheets of paper, the legal papers. Now, I want you to know I was probably 3, 4, and 5 years old. I was fascinated. Frederick, I would sit right next to that woman very quietly. I'd watch things coming off there in duplicate and triplicate. I'd watch them go into different documents. And you know what I used to think at that tiny little age? Whatever people could do, writing in an official fashion must be very important. Now, see, I'm being drawn to be a lawyer, but I'm a creative. And then the other thing, I loved Spanish. I double majored in college. One major was to, make my family happy, political science. The other was Spanish lit, because I actually envision myself as a goodwill ambassador going, let's say, to South America. Well, this is what is hysterical. And this has happened to me after my husband and I closed the business, and I was just pursuing everything I loved. I don't know if I wrote this to you, but do you know I'm now known as the ambassador of happiness? I just came back from six countries over a 3-week period of time. I spoke 8 times in 5 of those nations. And I was interviewed twice on national TV, featured in the press. I was speaking at universities. I spoke in front of all the leaders. And you know what I'm now known as through even the UNESCO Center for Peace? The ambassador of happiness. Now look at what this means to anybody in that 40-year-old quadrant you're talking about, right? A couple of months ago, I was invited by UNESCO to be a speaker at the first ever Nelson Mandela Day. And I was so honored. I thought, oh, this is awesome. International holiday. It's unity. Makes people feel good. Honored. They introduced me as the ambassador of happiness. And I thought, isn't this funny? The amazing thing that I said to a number of young people I was speaking to up there around the Capitol, I said, tell me something. Have you ever heard of the ambassador of happiness? Now, these are university students from everywhere. They said, no. I can see the look on their faces. I said, do you want to know why you never heard of the ambassador of happiness? There wasn't one. I said, do you know who it is? It's me. And it only happened because I kept following and pursuing everything I loved. I wanted to grow up to be happy. I decided this as a child. Instead of being a person, I wanted to grow up happy so that when I was older, I knew that I would be fully fashioned according to a way that felt authentic to me, where I could step out of my shell or my box and just be who I am. Mm-hmm. So here I am. I write about happiness. I'm invited around the world to speak. I get this title as like a goodwill ambassador to the world of happiness. I don't have to report to anybody other than myself. And I'm fortunate enough to be interviewed by people like you.
Oh, thank you.
Montreal. And think about and I love meeting people. So do you see all these things? This is no different for me than it is for anybody else. So again, back to that person you asked about. Maybe they can't do anything full time. Who says they can't do it part time? Who says they can't work with something on their own that over time, it's like the world makes room for you. People start to recognize you and your talents. And before you know it, you become better and more adept at what you're doing. And usually you have 2 or 3 things you put together and it makes your brand. And after a while, people make you become synonymous with your brand, and people want and know you. And that's my secret to happiness. Wow. I have several others, but doesn't it makes perfect sense. So I, in essence, am the living example of the message that I give.
Absolutely. All right, just before continuing this conversation, for you, the listeners of the Book Geek Unchained podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. I personally recommend the audiobook The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, or you can choose the audiobook of your choice for free by trying audible.com. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Fred. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Fred. You will be entertained, and at the same time, you will help a brother out. So everybody wins. Go to audibletrial.com/Fred for your free audiobook. Once again, we're talking to Maura Sweeney, and she's an author, international speaker, HuffPost blogger, podcaster, the ambassador of happiness. That's awesome. I love that. All right. So you and your husband, you made a lot of changes, and a lot of people, I mean, to me, there are 3 fears that people face. I mean, if you ask, I'm sure 90% of them will tell at least one of these fears. First is money. Second is failure. Third is rejection. I want to start that business. I want to write that book. I want to be the ambassador of happiness. I want to be a podcaster. Okay. Money. A lot of people are afraid of the lack of money. What would you tell them? How would you overcome that?
I'm glad you made that one of the number one. I usually don't, but boy, oh boy, I'm glad you did. I'm going to do my next podcast, and I was inspired earlier today. And here's the question. All my podcasts are questions for people to ask themselves. Are you buying or are you being sold? Do you want to know? Do you see the difference?
Yeah, I have an idea, but go ahead.
Okay, this is my sense, Frederick, and I'm much more of an observer of the human condition, which I think it's just a fascination I've had. When we were talking earlier about things that sound good, right? America, especially the United States, I know Canada's no different. We have Europe a lot that way, but it's more U.S. We are so consumer oriented. We can't get big enough, fat enough, right? We can't buy enough. And here's what happens is that because of that, money becomes the marker for all things. And I was not always that way. So I would say to people, before you buy the next thing, make sure you really want it, not because the world told you you need it or it's there to give you a sense of importance or value. You are your own value. The second thing I would say is, are you a purist? You know, people might have thought when we downsized that I was a minimalist. Not so. A purist is someone who lives a life that is synonymous with their value system, their interests, and their lifestyle desires. So here's a case in point. Do you need a 5,000 square foot home when you are two people with 1.5 kids and you could barely afford the mortgage payment? See, people put themselves in situations like that, and then you know what happens? They think they have no money. It's not that they don't have money. It's that they have made various choices that the world has maybe put upon them. And instead of being true to themselves, they're too busy paying bills for everything else that the world tells them they need. So I would say simplify your life and don't think about all the things you have to have in terms of looking like this success. Think about those things that are true for you. But I have to tell you, go ahead.
But I don't want to I want the nice stuff. I want the house. I want the car. I want the luxury. It's cool. It's fun.
Well, let me tell you, I think luxury is very nice, but here's another thing. If luxury is owning you, then you are a very poor person.
Yeah.
This is why it's interesting. You know something? People look at my husband and me and they cannot get over how much travel we do. And you know what? And I said, how funny that people would think that, because there are people that live in much bigger houses. They probably have fancier cars, but they have become cash poor.
Yeah.
So the question is, what are your values, and are your purchases and your expenditures in line and in harmony with what your values are? So let's say you do like a nice car. Let's say you do like a nice house. Can you do it? And what else do you like? So find the things you like and work it out in a way that works for you. People just always get wrapped up in what other people think they should have. But here's the thing. There's only one person paying the bill. You know who it is? You. So if you're doing these things to impress, then you just have to say, all right, then I'm putting myself in this kind of a financial setup. But that's where I always go to. People think that they need lots and lots and lots of money to do stuff, and that's really not so. It's a matter of the way they think. And if you really are, if you're authentically living your life, you could do so much more than most other people can. I probably have the nicest wardrobe I ever had. I'll give you a case in point. Here's another thing. Our last house was 4 bedrooms. It had 3-car garage. It had my husband's office, and we had a beautiful pool in the backyard that I never used. All right. Never used the pool. We moved to a smaller townhome because we want to be able to travel a lot and have lower overhead as we're going into this whole new industry that was for my husband and me as yet unnamed a couple of years ago. I am a regular member of the Safety Harbor Resort and Spa, right? It's a mile and a half away. It's right on Tampa Bay. It's a resort that movie stars used to go to. I'm a regular member there, so I go to classes every day. I go hang out at the pool. I could go eat. It's like being a member of a country club. I realized something. I pay less to be a member of that country club than I did to maintain our pool at the old house. And guess what? I don't have to cook there. I don't have to take care of the pool. I have people I could go to class with. I have great friends I meet, and I could leave it. I could take people out to eat. It is less expensive for me to have a better form or quality of life in that regard than I did at my old house. Very curious. So people just need to rethink and stop thinking like the world tells them they need to think. Think in terms of, all right, here's my money. Now let me take my money on one side, my value systems, my interests, my likes on the other. Get rid of what the world has sold you and live pure. And I'll tell you, your money will go a lot farther. And then you have more time because you're not always working to make the money to pay for things you really don't want.
Do you find,
how's that?
You know, sometimes when we're living, like let's say, okay, you're traveling, you're doing all of that, and people are telling you, wow, look at your life, it's wonderful. sometimes it seems like to the person who's living it, sometimes it's normal. Like it becomes normal. Don't you find? Like,
Yes.
yeah, you're grateful for your life. Don't get me wrong. Like you're grateful for what you do and you travel and all that. But when people tell you, oh, you're so lucky or you're so that, it's like, but you can do it too. Like it's not that complicated.
You know what? That gets right into comfort zones, and it gets right back into, comfort zones are very funny. You just addressed one of them. It's like, okay, the people that, if they don't live the high life, maybe their old friends aren't going to want them anymore because they want to be impressed, correct? But then you get other people. What was that movie, Made in Manhattan? You get other people that grow up in environments where their family never wants to see them do well, or their peer group doesn't want to see them do well. And so, what I would just say is, find out what you like and go for it, because yes, you may lose a few people along the way, and it happens everywhere all the time. Other people have their own set ways of life, and maybe you interfere with it. But here's the thing. Everybody can choose their form of living. Granted, mine is not an overnight deal. I've been working for a long time on it. But you know what? I feel, Frederick, like I write so that other people can gain lessons from life that it took me a long time to learn that they could do faster. Things I do because I love them, because they're authentic. I love traveling. Like my husband said to me as we were in several of these countries in Southeastern Europe, he said, Maura, you are such a trooper, because I tell you, I travel lightly. I could go from buses to jitneys to whatever. And yet I could also stay at really, really nice hotels. But here's a funny thing. I love what I do. I don't tell people to do what I do. I tell people to do what they love to do. And when you're doing something that you love to do, and it fuels your passions, and it gives you that energy because it's what you want, what you're about, what makes you happy, it's easy for you. You can create your own unique world space. And then when you do, you become an inspirer for other people to go and do the same thing.
Amen. That's very good. All right. Fear of failure. I'm afraid to fail. I don't want, because failing, it sucks to fail. It no, but it's painful. You may hurt people around you. You may, how do you deal with that fear of failure?
Well, isn't that another thing? I was reading something I wrote. Right now I'm doing my first ever Foundations of Happiness course. I found people are always asking me questions. I'd be writing them emails. Finally, I thought I need to write a course. So in the process, I pull up from my past a blog I wrote, and it was called Failure. And because I'm a little bit of an artist, I ended up with the prototypical picture of failure. When did we learn failure? We learned it in grade school. The big fat F that shows up on our paper. Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now look at this. This is another thing about social conditioning, and I think it's wonderful. The way you get good grades in school is by mimicking and repeating everything you're told. It's not by coming up with a creative answer, is it?
Yeah.
It's by repeating what the teacher wants to hear. So if you're 100% like what the teacher wants, you get an A. If you're mostly there, you get a B. But if you've got something totally different, something that comes out of your own mind, you get an F, and an F is not good. It's like being the equivalent of a loser. That gets so ingrained into our minds that, and this is as little children, Frederick. So how do you think that social conditioning works as we get older? We're afraid to come up with new ideas, right? We assume that something new that may or may not work, the risk, maybe it will fail. And because we are so averse to failure, we don't even go there. And so you know what happens as a result? We stop growing. I'm just reminded of something right now. I'm sure you and I are going to connect on LinkedIn if you're there, but someone a couple of years ago connected with me on LinkedIn. She was someone who used to work for me as one of the admin people in the telecommunications industry. Phenomenal lady. Still with Sprint. Anyway, she happened to write me privately, and she said, Maura, I just wanted to thank you for giving me room to make mistakes. This was as I was her manager. Now, you know what? It didn't even occur to me back then. Everybody that used to report to me in my offices, and I had, at one point, a couple of offices, maybe 75 people, whatever, and managers at various levels. I wanted to see everybody grow. We all knew what we needed to do on the larger in a larger context. But I wanted everybody within their arena and within their talent base to grow and to try and to solve new problems, and let's work together. And this woman, when she wrote that to me, I thought, look at that. I was not afraid so much to make mistakes, and I think I must have set an example for others, but that made me feel so good. We need more of that. We need it in the culture to say, guess what? You try something new. Failure is not failure. Failure is, I want to try something because I want to broaden myself. I want to look for new solutions. I want to look for new answers. I want to switch things around a little bit. And, the book that I originally submitted to you for review was called Exiting the Comfort Zone, Dance or Die. When I was little, I wanted to learn how to dance and never got the chance because I was groomed to be the smart and very, I would say very in-the-box lawyer. And yet, when I learned how to started learning how to dance, I was almost 50. Do you know I went and enrolled in college classes? I was so bad people didn't laugh with me, they laughed at me. I failed the courses twice. And you know what? I never gave up because I knew that when I was little, dancing was something that I knew would make me so happy. So I kept up. A couple of years later, somebody said to me in another dance class, it was the instructor, she was going through something, and she said to me, oh, Maura, you'll get this so easily. You're a natural. And I wanted to laugh. I said, I wish you knew me way back when. I said, because all it took me was 750 hours of dance classes to learn to be a natural at dance. That's failure. That's not failure. How do I want to say this? Failure is oftentimes in our mind, and it looms so largely that we avoid it like the plague. But in doing so, Frederick, we also prevent ourselves from living large, from going after our dreams and becoming the people, the greater people that has been in our hearts and our souls to become.
That's all.
That's my word on failure.
That's awesome. Many people, they cannot handle rejection. It's, you go on a date, you get rejected. It's really bad. You have a business idea, you have a business proposal, and you get met with indifference. I actually, you know what? I have a colleague of mine, and she told me, and right now she's a business owner. She owns a gym. And I talked to her, and she tells me, and she's around 50. Yeah, actually she is 50. And she says to me, I always wanted to be an actress. And I said, why didn't you pursue it? She says, because I knew that if I get rejected as an actress, it would kill me. It would I would be devastated. And it was almost like she said, I can get rejected in a gym business owner. Like, I can get rejected there because it's not as, personal to me. And it was mind boggling when I heard that. But I think that's how, and she wanted to do this since forever,
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah.
She better go out and do it. You know what? I'm just looking I wrote down something about you when I was researching you for this interview. And you said, I like this because it touched me. You said you're passionate about the human psyche and the whys of people. You're telling me the story of this girl, and my heart is like, oh, how awful, how sad. First of all, she still needs to step out. And as far as rejection goes, I want to just share this for whoever's listening today and afraid of rejection. When we have an interest, we owe it to ourselves and to society and to our own happiness and to the betterment of this world, to the peace of this world and I want to say the enrichment of this world, to pursue those things we're interested in. She's saying if she goes and becomes an actor or tries and she gets rejected, it would just devastate her, as if there's only one rejection to be had. Has this girl ever considered how frequently people who want to go into acting are rejected? There's a story that comes to mind now, and I want to remember who she is. Katie Couric. Okay. Katie Couric, if anybody has ever looked in this girl's story, you remember she was like always on the morning news in the U.S. for years. Do you know her backstory was this? She was a journalism major in college and always wanted to be on TV as a newscaster. She joined Turner, which was
Turner?
not ESPN. What is it? CNN.
Yeah.
CNN, right? She was there at the inception of CNN, and she was working behind the camera, probably, co-producing or whatever. One day, the person on camera didn't show up, so she had to get on the camera. She got in front of the camera. She's doing a little piece, which of course to her, I'm sure, is all joy because it's what she always wanted. One of the original owners of CNN happened to be watching her at home, got on the phone, called somebody and said, get that girl off TV. Don't you ever let me see her face on there again. Now, you want to talk about being devastated? Katie Couric probably, was licking her wounds, but she stayed on, kept doing what she did. She eventually moved over. Was it CBS, NBC? Maybe she was at NBC. That girl found her niche and found, are you ready for this? Here's the operative word, her venue. Same skills, same desire. I want to be doing the news, different venue. That girl became, I believe, one of the top paid, I want to say newscasters in the United States. Wow. Changed her venue. Now look at your friend. You better go home and tell her either to listen to me, call me up, or just knock her over the top side of her head. Do you see what happened with Katie? It was so much in her heart. She did not allow someone else's rejection to discourage her from her dream. She found another venue. I tell that to people all the time. Do you know that's true even with me? There are many places I'll go, and people don't resonate with everybody all at the same place. So you find another venue you go in, and suddenly the vibration's there. But let me tell you the funny part of the Katie Couric story. I happened to hear her bio one day, and they interviewed the guy from CNN who dissed her on TV. He said, worst mistake of my life. And think about that. So you need to tell that girl rejection. Oh, my goodness. We could put up a million reasons. And really all they come down to is fear.
Oh, yeah.
Frederick. Yeah. Every one of us. All right, how fearful do you suppose I felt at 50? I knew at 3 years old I wanted to be a dancer. To me, that was the epitome of being happy. Not that I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to know how to freely move my body to music. And I grew up, I never played sports, so I was so uncoordinated, and I always felt like I lacked in grace. I had so much mental baggage to overcome in my process or journey of learning how to dance, because in my mind, I thought the only people that learn how to dance are little 5-year-old girls in tutus. Imagine being 50. So if I could learn how to dance at 50, she could learn how to become an actress at 50. And there are more and more roles out there. And if not, she'll create one of her own. And just do these things. We don't know where people are going to find us. We don't know what's going to connect with us. But when we keep doing what we love, people need to know this.
Yeah,
ready?
Go ahead.
Okay, it's called the happiness advantage, but I tell you, I knew about it years ago. Harvard University did all the studies. They discovered that when people are happy, engaging in whatever it is they're pursuing, they will do or perform up to 50, as in 50, up to 50% better.
Really?
I was in corporate America. You think I was interested in telecommunications? I wasn't. I'm not techie, but you know what? I love people. I love developing people. I love developing cultures, and I love promoting people's talents. I had the #1 office out of 34 offices throughout the country down here in Tampa Bay, Florida. You know why? Because I promoted happiness. That was our secret. So that's another thing to consider. You do what you love. You pursue what you're happy with. Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy to get there. The process a lot of times is psychologically, and sometimes even like in my case, I was so uncoordinated. But you know what? You break through eventually, and the process is part of the whole undoing. And it's like you undo the old person while you're building up the new. It's glorious.
All right, guys. Hey, wow. Thank you. How was that? Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Maura. Thank you, Maura Sweeney, for your enthusiasm. Thank you for your, your enlightening aura. Yeah, I felt your enthusiasm, and your light. So that's always awesome. That's always awesome to talk to people like that's always uplifting. Why do I have to talk? Why do I have to call all the way to Florida where she is? Or, oftentimes all my guests, they're from California, Oklahoma, all over the US. Why can't I have those kind of people right around me, like right now, all the time? Anyway, guys, it's time for me to ride off into the sunset of day 5 of the 2016 Podcast Blast. And tomorrow we're going to have part 2 of this conversation with Maura Sweeney. Part 2, we're going to dive into her series. That's right, the Art of Happiness series. We're going to talk about influence. We're going to talk about values. We're going to talk about the right kind of competition. We're going to talk about what she does and why she's successful at it. Brace yourself. This is going to be a fun ride. As for me right now, catch me on Facebook, Frédéric Baye, on Twitter @ByFred, YouTube channel The Book Geek, and subscribe at frédéricbaye.com for all kinds of goodies, articles, reviews, podcasts. With this, stay safe and don't forget, live with purpose, passion, and love. Bye-bye.